So guys, something really disturbing happened on Thursday, May 21st, 2026 in a community called Umulogho in the Obowo local government area of Imo State. Though the details of the events are still sketchy, it has been widely reported that neighbors in a residence in the community noticed the absence of 21-year-old Wendy Achumba, a nursing student at Our Lady of Mercy College of Nursing. Wendy, who hailed from Abia State, was a post-basic midwifery student who had already completed her midwifery program and was undergoing post-basic training at the institution in the village. She was full of life and had dreams of becoming a professional nurse, helping to bring new lives into the world and caring for mothers and babies. The residence where Wendy lived was an off-campus apartment where several nursing students also lived in. On that Thursday evening, the building where Wendy stayed reportedly had 3 student occupants in total. However, 2 of our neighbors had left earlier that day, around 7 p.m., to begin their nursing experience at the hospital. This left Wendy alone in the compound for the night. When evening came and Wendy did not step out of her room or respond to repeated knocks on her door, her neighbors became concerned. They noticed her absence from the compound's common areas, but they figured her door was locked, which suggested that she might be inside resting or studying. There is also an alternate account of how the discovery was made. According to some reports, it was Wendy's boyfriend who had come around to visit her. He was a painter by profession, and when he arrived at her residence, he noticed that the door was locked. He knocked repeatedly, but Wendy did not answer. He tried calling her phone, but she could not be reached. Growing increasingly worried, those present in the compound made the decision to force Wendy's door open. They needed to know if she was okay and if something had happened to her. When they finally managed to break through the door, they were met with a gruesome sight that could traumatize them forever. Wendy Achumba was lying half naked on her bed. Her clothes were torn. There were bloodstains visible in the room, and most horrifying of all, her throat had been viciously slit. The brutality of the attack was shocking and incomprehensible. Those who found her immediately made further disturbing discoveries. The door had been locked from the inside, which raised questions about how the killer or killers had left the scene. Wendy's mobile phone was also missing from the room. The scene showed clear signs of violence and struggle. The police were immediately informed about the discovery. They processed the crime scene, documenting the evidence and taking photographs. Wendy's body was evacuated from the apartment and taken to the mortuary for preservation and further investigation. According to reports, Wendy's boyfriend was considered the first suspect in the crime and was taken into custody by the police for further interrogation. This was standard procedure, as those closest to victims are often questioned to establish their whereabouts and involvement. The young painter found himself detained, even though he had been the one to raise the alarm that led to her eventual discovery. News of Wendy's brutal murder spread quickly through the Umulogho community. The youth and women of the area were angered by the horrific crime. They organized protests demanding justice for the murdered girl. The traditional ruler of the community also came out publicly to condemn the horrific crime. He called on community members to cooperate with law enforcement and to provide any information that might help fish out the culprit or culprits responsible for Wendy's death. The entire community was shocked and wanted answers. The youth of the community took matters into their own hands. By gathering information, they began asking questions, following leads, and also sharing what they knew with each other and with authorities. Their efforts led to the apprehension of 2 suspects, a man in his 40s named Umulogho and another man identified simply as Emmanuel. According to reports, Umulogho was a well-known figure in the Umulogho community. He worked as a vulcanizer, repairing car tires and tubes. But apart from this primary business, Onyema had also set up a small shop where he offered another service that was in high demand in the community. Due to the unstable power supply in the area, many residents, especially students, did not have consistent electricity to charge their phones. Onyema had recognized this need and created a business around it. Students and other residents could come to his shop, pay a small fee, and then charge their mobile phones there. Wendy Achumba was one of those students who regularly paid to charge her phone at Onyema's shop. She had been a customer of his, trusting him with her phone and also paying him for the service he provided. But during one of these routine visits to charge her phone, something had happened. Onyema had flirted with Wendy and made sexual advances toward her. He had asked her to sleep with him, and Wendy had rejected his sexual advances. She had said no. She was not interested in him in that way, and she had made that clear. For many men, such a rejection would be the end of the matter. They would accept the woman's decision and move on. But Umulogho was not that kind of man. When this rejection had angered him, it had wounded his ego, and he had decided that he would not accept her refusal. Onyema began watching Wendy. He He traced her to her residence and also studied her routine. He learned where she lived, when she steps out and returned, who her neighbors were, and when the compound was likely to be empty. There are unverified claims that Onyema Okonkwo was actually the caretaker of the compound where Wendy stayed and that he had access to spare keys for the rooms in the building, including Wendy's room. On that Thursday, May 21st, Onyema knew that Wendy's two neighbors had left for their nursing experience placements. He knew she would be alone in the compound and that this was the opportunity he had been waiting for. Onyema enlisted the help of his friend Emmanuel. Together, the two men went to Wendy's residence around 7 p.m. It is not exactly clear how they managed to get into her room. One possibility is that Onyema knocked on the door, and when Wendy opened it to check who was outside, the two men grabbed her and forced their way inside. The other possibility, if Onyema was indeed the caretaker, is that he simply used a spare key to unlock her door and enter. No one really knows for now. But once inside the room, Onyema confessed to hitting Wendy with a stick. Emmanuel placed a knife against her neck, possibly to stop her from raising an alarm or fighting back. Despite having a knife at her throat, despite being outnumbered and overpowered, Wendy tried to fight them off. She scratched Onyema in the process, leaving physical evidence of her resistance on his body. She fought for her life, even when the odds were stacked against her. The two men then took turns, forcing themselves on Wendy. After the repeated violation, Onyema made a horrifying realization. Wendy had recognized him. She had scratched him during the struggle. She knew who he was, and if they let her leave, she would report them to the police. So Onyema and Emmanuel made the cold, calculated decision to permanently silence Wendy Achumba. They viciously slit her throat and also carried her mobile phone. The two men then left the scene, somehow managing to lock the door from the inside as they departed. How they made this happen remains unclear, but when Wendy's body was discovered, the door was said to have been locked from inside. The two suspects were eventually handed over to the police for further investigation. When interrogated, Onyema Okonkwo confessed to the crime. He admitted that he and Emmanuel had gained entrance into Wendy's house. They had taken turns in violating her before silencing her forever. He acknowledged that he had hit her with a stick, that Emmanuel had placed a knife to her throat, and that they had ended her life only after she recognized him. After the real culprits were arrested and confessed, Wendy's parents reportedly called for the release of her boyfriend, the painter, who was still being held in police custody. He had been detained simply because he was the one who raised the alarm that led to the discovery of her lifeless body. With the actual perpetrators now in custody, there was no reason to continue holding an innocent man. What happened to Wendy Achumba was deeply disturbing. This was not a random act of violence by strangers on a dark street. This was a premeditated attack by someone Wendy knew, someone she had trusted enough to use his services regularly. It happened right inside her house, in the place where she should have been safest. The fact that a simple rejection of unwanted sexual advances could lead to such a brutal violence is very terrifying. The Imo State Police Command are actively working on the case. As investigations continue and more information emerges, the public will be promptly updated. So make sure to like, share and subscribe to this channel or page so that you don't miss out on any updates on this case.